Don't adjust your TV sets. Don't adjust your computers. I know it's been a while. We are back. Thank you guys for joining us. Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. That's Ari. I'm Korea. If you guys did see our last video, we did say we're going to take a little bit of a break, and that break obviously did happen. Ari was on vacation a little bit. I've just, been, recovering with my surgery, post surgery now, but we just wanted to come back. Obviously, we're not fully back, obviously, just giving out our daily best bets, but obviously with college football literally right around the corner, as we've been talking about, the NFL season just, pretty much just weeks away at this point. As Ari, as we talked about, we had our fantasy football draft the previous weekend, so as the drafts start to come, obviously what that means, the season's about right on way. So obviously a very exciting time of year, as we get closer and closer to the start of the NFL and college football season. But obviously, we do got some baseball here on the card, and I got to play for you, obviously, today. Just one and only play today. I'm slowly, building that confidence back up, as we get back into our best bets here. I got one play for you today, and we're going to go out to Philly. And, I really don't like backing this team right now. So if you've been backing the Phillies, I'm sorry. But today we're just backing them on the runs. We're not backing them on the money line or anything. We're backing the runs. I think they're going to score today. We're taking their team total over 4.5 runs, minus 125 on DraftKings right now. I think the bats come out alive today. Look, yesterday, if you took the Phillies, I'm sorry. You know why? They didn't score a run. They didn't score a single thing. They got shut out by the Miami Marlins. Yes, of all people. Viente Belloso might be a Cy Young candidate for all I care for at this point. But Belloso, Bozo, whatever you want to call him, this man went 7 innings, 4 hits, 4 Ks in Philly against the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, you can credit the fact that the Phillies bats have been a little, up and down all around, for the past few weeks. But at the same time, Belloso was one of the, better pitchers emerging for the Miami Marlins as of recent. I think he had a below a 3 ERA that all the way down. Now it's all the way down to 2 after that amazing performance. So, I'm just taking the Phillies today, to bounce back their offense today. I think today is the day their offense shows up. They're facing Edward Cabrera of the Miami Marlins, and Cabrera is good, but when he's not getting the strikeouts, that's when things start to get a little shaky. And, against a Philly team that doesn't really strike out a lot, I think it's going to be a long day for him. Obviously, you have his last 2 starts against the Braves and then the Padres, 2 teams that, the Braves right now, they love to strike out. The Braves love striking out. They can't do anything. When he pitched in Atlanta, he went 5 innings, 8 Ks. And then when he went back home against where he pitches better at home against the Padres, 7 innings, 4 Ks. But today in this spot, I think the Phillies bats show up today. You obviously have that juice total of 4.5 with the over minus 125. I think the books are saying that the Phillies offense shows up today after not showing up yesterday, not even scoring a single run. We don't have to worry about who's pitching for the other side. It is Tyler Phillips going for the Phillies today. And Ari, if you remember Tyler Phillips, that was the all Mariner fans remember that game. That was the game. He only went 1 2/3. Gave up 8 runs, obviously. And now coming back home, obviously we talk about rookie pitchers, playing a lot better at home. And now he's back home in his first home start since the complete game shutout against Cleveland. So I didn't want to take the money line because I do like the money line for Philly, but I just think the Phillies offense comes out today. Obviously, I do love backing a team, with an offensive advantage after a game where they don't even score a single run. So I'm just going to take the Phillies here, for them to score 5 runs today at minus 125. I think their offense shows out today. And you look at the splits for some of these guys, obviously, Bryce Harper 2 for 5. He has a homer off of Edward Cabrera in his career. Trey Turner 3 for 4. Bryce Hassad has a couple of hits as well. I think, with some of those key guys, having some, big hits, obviously, with Bryce Harper obviously having a home run. I think that plays present, obviously, depending on your key guys, obviously, to contribute in this lineup after a game where they could not even get a single run. I think their offense shows out today. This is a game where, their backs are kind of against the wall, which is kind of weird to say for the Phillies, but, they've lost 4 in a row. Their offense, their pitching pretty much just got mollywopped by the red-hot Arizona Diamondbacks right now. So, and then they go back home and their offense still doesn't do anything. So, this is more of a back against the wall. Your offense has to show up. You've only scored a combined, I think I want to say a combined 8 runs in 4 games. Your offense needs to do something here. So I'm taking the Phillies team total over 4.5 here, minus 125. That's my one and only play for today. Just taking it light, obviously, as we ease into coming back here. But obviously, with college football right around the corner, we do have some futures to give out. And Ari, I know you have a future you want to touch on a little bit, whether it's football related. Ari, I'll let you go talking about your future. What are you taking for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think first we'll just do a quick recap of what we talked about before when we talked about futures last, which was a lot for me. Just a quick recap. Arizona to win the Big 12 in I think a wide open conference. Everyone's saying that there's 5, 6, 7 teams that are capable, winning the conference. So I just see value in that. Rutgers over 6 wins. It was minus 115 when I mentioned it. It's now up to minus 140. So it's going to be, it could go up to 6.5 in some books, with that juice going that high over 6, which I still, obviously I prefer at 6 for the, push potential. But if it's at minus 140, I'd rather have 6.5 at, that'd probably be close to plus money at 6.5. So I still like that. Colts over 8.5 wins and a sprinkle on them to win the division. I still like that. Seahawks make the playoffs. The odds have kind of shifted a little bit. I think last I looked, it was kind of in the right direction. So obviously, you like that. The Vikings, we got the news literally a half hour ago of McCarthy being out for the season, but I don't know if that changes that much because Darnold was expected to start the season as a starter. Maybe McCarthy was, going to take over late in the year, but I'm not sure, it changes too much, although the juice has gone in the favor of the over here. So not in the way, that goes in the way of my play, but I mean, I'm still anti-Vikings this year, nonetheless. And then the 3 player props, Kyler passing yards, Jaden Daniels rushing yards, and Derrick Henry rushing touchdowns. All 3 of them I'm still in on. The lines haven't really changed that much. They're still relatively the same. So that's what I talked about before. And then getting into what I like for just a couple more plays. One is Arizona over 7.5 wins. I talked about it before. Here, I'm going to pull up because I had the schedule up a second ago. Just looking at the schedule, it was originally at 8. So, you don't necessarily want to go, down. But, I think that just because of the way the odds shifted, obviously, it was getting juiced, a little bit too heavily to the under to where it moved down. Now it's close to even money at 7.5. And just looking at the schedule, I mean, they should start off 2-0 against New Mexico and Northern Arizona, obviously. So that's 2 wins. I think that they beat, Texas Tech at home. They beat Colorado at home. I think that they beat TCU. It's on the road, but I think they beat TCU, and then ASU they should win at home. So that's 6 wins right there. So then you're just asking for 2 more wins, from the rest of the schedule, which is tough. But I think there's enough talent for Arizona to win 2 of their tough games. Would that be 1, 2? At Kansas State, at Utah, at BYU, home against West Virginia, at UCF, and then home against Houston. They just need two of those to cash this over. I think they can win, 2 to 3 at least. Obviously, banking on Arizona to win the Big 12, they'd have to win at least 9 or 10 games, most likely for that, obviously. So that play I like at that value. And then just a sprinkle, going off of my Colts love this year with the over wins and sprinkle the division. If they're going to do all that, I think Richardson will be in the conversation to win comeback player of the year. The other players in the conversation are obviously, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow, Kirk Cousins, who are all, I think those are the 3 that are the top 3 favorites right ahead of Anthony Richardson right now. So it's obviously going to depend on how they do and how their team does and all of that involved. But just banking on the Colts winning the division led by Richardson having a huge year. It's probably going to be mostly dependent on him having a big year and all of that. So again, just kind of correlating with my previous plays I liked with Arizona win the Big 12 and the Colts win total and sprinkle in division. So yeah, those are the 2 plays that I like after the other plays I talked about.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned all of your previous futures, as we talked about, in previous, episodes, about a couple weeks ago. But targeting these two as you added today. First with Arizona's win total. You mentioned, if you're gonna take Arizona, to sprinkle to win the Big 12, you might also take their over and wins, as you mentioned. You have for you obviously there's a viable path for 8 wins, and the fact that you're getting it at pretty much almost a pick 'em at -115. It's pretty evident that if Arizona, with the value of them potentially winning the Big 12 in their new conference, with pretty much how wide open it is after Oklahoma and Texas are now gone. Obviously the heavy favorite OK State and Kansas State and Utah, those are pretty much three of the bigger favorites, and then I'd say probably Arizona right there in that fourth slot. I think there's a lot of value there for the Wildcats, obviously, to win the Big 12 and also get over that 7.5 win total. And then going off of your kind of your Colts lore per se, you mentioned if you're taking the Colts to win a division, Colts over 8.5 wins, they're going to have to do it some way. And I feel like there's a great path for A-Rich to win comeback player of the year, obviously separating his shoulder. I forgot, I think it was like week 4 or 5, very, very early in the season last year. Obviously, pretty much Gardner Minshew had to lead the reins, for the rest of the season. But obviously, there was the undermining expectation that Anthony Richardson would obviously return this year. And, you never know with these kind of with these futures, just because, injuries can happen again. And, we don't wish that. But, obviously, there is that concern. Obviously, a separated shoulder is, not an easy one to recover from. But I feel as if, if the Colts do have that great comeback year, I think obviously it's led by A-Rich and his, versatility, being a great runner. We saw little splashes of it, early last season. Obviously, the Colts were a pretty talked about team throughout the first month of the season with, how well Anthony Richardson was playing and, how well he was really much commanding that offense, in terms of his dual threat ability. But as soon as he got injured, it pretty much just went, all completely upside down. They had to pretty much revamp that offense into a more of a pass heavy, stationary quarterback offense. But now I think that they get their star quarterback who they took early. I think, there is a potential for him to, have that comeback season. Obviously comeback seasons are targeted for, players maybe coming off early injuries or, something like that, just horrific injuries or stuff like that, whether it's on or off the field. So I do like Anthony Richardson for you to be the comeback player of the year right now for some early value at plus 650. That's some great value for you on your, I guess, two futures for now. Obviously, we're just getting closer and closer to the season. Like I said, Ari has all of his futures that he's recapped. I have a few, not many, but I have a few just to start out here. First, I did take the Texans to win the AFC South here. I pretty much just am more backing the fact that, this team, holistically, obviously not in terms of fantasy, did look a lot better than they did, in terms of the previous year. You look at CJ Stroud taking, the steps for him going from year 1 to year 2. You have, I think honestly, you can argue that Joe Mixon might be an upgrade at running back position for them. They do have a healthy receiving core now with Nico Williams, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and now Stephon Diggs. So I think obviously, with his controversy off the field, whatever, I still think, he's one of the best route runners. When you look at his ability to, run routes, I think that adds a little versatility in that offense where you have, your deep shot, Tank Dell, who can really, stretch out the field. And then you have, you have another deep threat in Nico Collins, who, CJ Stroud loves to throw the ball deep. So I think, that, those deep threats providing a nice, maybe 10, 15-yard route runner like Stephon Diggs, some great opportunities on offense. And then you look at the defensive side, and obviously it's all about Will Anderson, obviously the start defensive end. And, I think we know how D'Amico Ryans loves to develop that defense, the defensive line. And, I think with how stout they played last year, I think, that was obviously the main concern, just their defense, obviously, just how, compared to all defenses in the NFL, I think, the Texans may have a little bit of a challenge, obviously, with their own division, with teams like the Colts, as you said, or teams like Jacksonville, who a lot of teams, a lot of people say they both of those teams may have a little bit of a jump after their previous season. I do like the Texans just to get the job done, just to win that division. I think it's going to be really tight between those three teams when we talk about the Texans, the Colts, and the Jags potentially. But I think the Texans may separate themselves, later on as they get down that regular season, because it's not going to be an easy schedule for them. Obviously, one of the harder schedules in the league. But if they do get it, I think they have a chance to win the AFC South there. And then Justin Jefferson, you kind of mentioned it earlier. Now, even though he wasn't really going to be a huge factor, obviously JJ McCarthy still being out for the season does play president there. Obviously, he was presumed to be the quarterback of the future, and he was probably going to be backing up Sam Darnold this year anyway. But now that he's out, it's probably just going to be Sam Darnold taking the realms. And like I said it before. I was not really a big fan of Sam Darnold to begin with, and just this whole offense, as you mentioned, you're on the Vikings under 6.5 wins. I'm just not a fan of this Vikings team this year. A lot of changes, and whether it's good or bad, you can say, well, this is Justin Jefferson's first quarterback without Kirk Cousins, obviously, and he's a talent in itself, and you can say all that, but I'm still a little questioning about this particular entry, just because with just all this quarterback controversy and whatnot in terms of what's going on in Minnesota, you really don't know. But right now it's presumed to be Sam Darnold. I personally I'm just not a fan of everything the Vikings, not a fan of their offense, not a fan of their defense, not a fan of their win total. So that's why I'm just more fading Justin Jefferson. I'm still a little bit of a question mark if I'm going to put it in my season entry, but for now, I just really am just not a fan of just this whole entire offense. I just think it's going to be a very interesting year, for the Minnesota Vikings, as they, as you mentioned, they're over 6.5 is significant, not significantly, but there is juice on the over. So, books think that they have somewhat of a bounce back year after, even though there's really nothing that is exciting for me about this team right now. So I'm just going to stick with the fade, obviously, not really fading Justin Jefferson, per se, because obviously you can argue he's one of the best, if not the best wide receiver right now in the league, but I'm just more fading this whole entire offense. I think that, obviously injuries happen. I don't wish them, but we look at last year, and Jefferson did get injured for a little bit. There was a stretch where, he was down for a long time, and, there were people like myself who had him for over 6.5, 100-yard games, and he ended up a couple short because he got injured. So, there are some games where, there are going to be some times where, you don't really want an injury, but when you take an under for a season-long prop, you definitely are not going to be complaining when an injury pops up to that specific player. So those are my two entries for now. Obviously, those are speculative to change as we get closer and closer to the start of both the college football and the NFL season. But I do have one more future that I really am high on this year. And it's Ole Miss. I'm high on the Rebels. I'm high on Ole Miss this year. I think they're going to make the expanded college football playoff right now. If you go to DraftKings and you go to futures, you scroll all the way to make the college football playoff. If you click on yes for Ole Miss to make the college football playoff, that's minus 130 right now. You look at their schedule right now already. The AP, and obviously you got to take the AP poll with the smallest grain of salt, but obviously right now they're seen as the fourth best team in the SEC, and obviously the SEC is considered the powerhouse in all of football. You have Georgia, who obviously is the overwhelming favorite, and then right behind them is Texas, and then Bama. Well, excuse me, right in front of them is Texas and Bama. Well, luckily for Ole Miss, they don't have to play the two teams in front of them. They don't have to play Georgia. Obviously, I think that's going to be a loss there. And they have to play LSU, and I don't think that's going to be a win there. That's going to be on the road. But you look at this Ole Miss schedule, right? They don't play Bama. They don't play Texas. They do got to play Oklahoma, but Oklahoma's at home, and they do play a lot better at home. Right now, early books say that Ole Miss is about 6.5-point favorite at home. But you look at the rest of the season, right? They play Mississippi State, Florida, Arkansas, South Carolina, Kentucky. That's their SEC schedule. They don't play. They're not playing outside of LSU, and Oklahoma, and Georgia. That's about it. Like I think they can, if they can win one of those three, potentially two, if they want to potentially sneak getting a win at LSU, because I think that they have a chance to win at LSU. I think this team can go 10-2, 11-1. And I think that would make them almost essentially a lock to make the college football playoff. You look at their schedule right now, I think they start out the season, pretty much undefeated with how easy their schedule is. They don't play a single ranked opponent until I think they play Oklahoma all the way until this is obviously at the time, teams can, bump in and out the rankings, but they're not playing a top team until they have to play Oklahoma in October. And so I think with the fact that, Ole Miss has a really favorable schedule, I think they really have a great shot here to win, to make the college football playoff. Their schedule is pretty favorable. You look at all the matchups. The SEC obviously is still a dominant conference, but Alabama is not the same Alabama as they are last year, obviously. Texas is still going to be a factor, but they don't have to play Texas at all this year. And then obviously the one team they have to play outside of that in terms of the top four is Georgia. But for Ole Miss, I don't think they really have to play any formidable opponents. Obviously LSU is their first hard opponent, but that's really a road game. And, who knows where they're going to be all the way October 12th. And then the next week they got to play Oklahoma. After their bye, they get a whole bye week before they have to rest for Oklahoma. I think that's even more of an advantage. After they go to LSU, they get a week to prepare to Oklahoma at home. I think that's a great great fit for them. So I'm just taking Ole Miss to make the college football playoff right now. I don't really like their win total. I just want to take them just to make the college football playoff, especially now with the college football playoff expanded, obviously, now to 12 teams rather than the 4 teams that has been in previous years. I think now with an expanded team, and we saw how Ole Miss finished the season last year, I think this year is a great year for them to make the college football playoff, their first one, especially now that it's expanded. So I'm taking them to make the expanded college football playoff at -130. I think it's a great look for the future right there. Especially when you have teams like Georgia and Oregon who are like -600 and -500 to make the college football playoff. Pretty much Vegas is saying that they're not going to lose any games this year. But when you're getting value on, you can argue the third or maybe even second best team in the SEC. Sorry, Texas fans. I think that Ole Miss is a really, really good shot here to make the college football playoff at -130. So I think this is a great shot. Obviously, Lane Kiffin leading that team. We see how high potent their offense is with Jackson Dart. I think with all the receivers they have at Ole Miss, I think this is a great year for them. So I'm taking them to make the college football playoff at 130. That's my one college football future for now. Obviously, as we get more toward the beginning of the season, we're gonna have some more futures for college football, NFL. Obviously, you can find all of these plays and for our futures card, whatever you want, on our Twitter below, AKP Sports Talk. We'll have all of our stuff posted momentarily. Obviously, for some of you footy fans, the Premier League starts in a few days. Obviously, you can see my smile is beaming. So tomorrow, Thursday, I'm going to be doing some Premier League futures. Obviously, with the season starting on Friday, I'm going to be giving out some futures for teams potentially to be safe, relegation, who potentially may win the league, all that fun stuff. So I'm going to give out some futures tomorrow. But obviously, as we get closer to the season, Ari and I will be both giving out some more NFL futures, some more college football futures. And of course, the season entry will be hopefully made soon. Just some technical issues behind the scene, but we're hopefully locking that season entry soon, as we get started for the NFL season. But obviously, exciting times here, obviously, as we get ready to kick off some football. We've been waiting for it. That's going to do it for this episode. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. That's Ari. I'm Korea. We'll see you guys tomorrow.